rejected as a blackmail order bride. Until the cowboy said, "She's mine." The educated woman stepped off the dusty stagecoach, clutching her father's hidden documents, while the crowd's hostile whispers cut through the desert air like vultures circling prey. The townspeople saw only her dark skin, dismissing her as a shipping mistake, an unwanted burden to be returned east on the next stage. Her fate seemed sealed. Humiliation, rejection, and destitution awaited. But the quiet cowboy watching from the saloon's shadow recognized something the others missed, something that stirred memories of his own failures to protect the innocent. What none of them knew was that she possessed legal papers that could destroy the town's most powerful man, while he carried skills that could either save her life or cost them both everything. Would their dangerous alliance survive long enough to expose the truth, or would prejudice silence them forever? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The stagecoach wheels ground to a halt in Copper Ridge's dusty main street. Serafina Montgomery stepped down, her dark blue traveling dress pristine despite the long journey. She clutched a worn leather satchel against her chest, her father's final gift weighing heavy in her hands. The Arizona sun blazed overhead as curious eyes emerged from storefronts and saloons. Whispers spread like wildfire through the small crowd gathering around the stage depot. Sarah held her chin high, scanning the faces for her intended husband. A portly man in a checkered vest pushed through the onlookers. His face went pale when he saw her. The marriage broker had failed to mention certain details in his correspondence. The man shook his head vigorously. His voice carried across the street for all to hear. The contract was void. There had been a mistake. She would need to find other arrangements. Sarah's heart sank, but her expression remained steady. She had faced rejection before. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, more hostile. Someone suggested she catch the next stage back east. Another voice called her presence inappropriate for their respectable town. Mayor Cornelius Blackwood emerged from the bank, his silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. He assessed the situation with calculating eyes. His smile appeared friendly, but his words cut deep. Perhaps it would be best for everyone if she simply moved along. From the shadows of the Silver Dollar Saloon, Caleb Thornfield watched the scene unfold. His weathered hands gripped his coffee cup as familiar anger built in his chest. He had seen this kind of cruelty before, back east when corrupt officials destroyed his family. The memory of his sister's tears still haunted him. The crowd pressed closer around Sarah. Their judgment felt suffocating in the desert heat. She straightened her shoulders, refusing to show weakness. Her father had taught her that dignity was armor no one could strip away. Widow Esther Hartwell stepped forward, her black mourning dress rustling. As the town's most influential woman, her words carried weight. She declared that decent folks had standards to maintain. Some people simply did not belong in civilized society. Sarah's grip tightened on her satchel. Inside lay documents that could change everything. But revealing them now would be dangerous. She needed to understand this town's power structure first. Her father's lessons in strategy echoed in her mind. The rejected suitor wiped sweat from his brow, eager to distance himself from the situation. He announced loudly that his reputation could not be associated with such arrangements. The crowd murmured their approval of his decision. Caleb set down his cup and stepped into the street. His boots kicked up small clouds of dust with each deliberate step. The crowd parted as he approached, recognizing the quiet authority in his movement. He had failed to protect his family once. That failure had driven him west, seeking redemption in the endless desert. Now fate offered him another chance. He would not waste it. His voice cut through the hostile murmurs like a blade through silk. Clear and unwavering, he spoke 3 words that changed everything. She belonged to him now. Anyone with objections could discuss them privately. The crowd fell silent. Caleb Thornfield was known as a fair man, but not one to cross. His reputation with both words and weapons preceded him throughout the territory. Sarah stared at him in surprise. She had expected many things upon arrival, but not salvation from a stranger. His blue eyes met hers with unmistakable respect, something she had rarely seen from men in her position. Mayor Blackwood's jaw tightened. This development complicated his plans for the surrounding land. He forced another politician's smile and suggested they all return to their business. The matter was settled. Caleb offered Sarah his arm. She hesitated for a moment, weighing her limited options. Trust came hard after years of disappointment, but his gesture held no demand, only protection. She accepted his escort with quiet dignity. Together they walked toward the boarding house, the crowd's stares burning into their backs. Behind them, whispered conversations resumed with renewed intensity. At the boarding house, Caleb secured her a room and paid for a week in advance. The proprietor, Mrs. Chen, accepted his money without comment. Business was business, regardless of her personal opinions. Sarah finally spoke, her voice steady despite the day's turmoil. She thanked him but questioned his motivations. Men rarely helped without expecting something in return. Caleb removed his hat, revealing sandy brown hair touched with premature gray. He explained simply that everyone deserved basic human decency. His past had taught him the cost of standing silent when others suffered. She studied his face, searching for deception. Instead, she found genuine conviction and old pain. Perhaps her father's belief in honorable men was not entirely misplaced. As evening approached, Sarah unpacked her few belongings. The leather satchel remained unopened, its contents too precious to risk. Tomorrow, she would begin understanding Copper Ridge's true nature. Outside her window, the town settled into its evening rhythm. She had survived the first test. Many more awaited, but she was no longer facing them alone. Caleb walked back to his small ranch outside town, his mind already working on the challenges ahead. Something about the woman's bearing suggested hidden depths. Her education was evident despite her circumstances. The game had begun, though most players remained unaware of the stakes. Dawn broke over Copper Ridge as Sarah made her way to the general store. Mrs. Chen had mentioned the seamstress position, though her tone suggested little hope. Sarah needed work immediately. Her savings would last only days. The store owner, Mr. Patterson, looked her up and down with obvious skepticism. His wife had abandoned the sewing work months ago, claiming poor eyesight. He offered minimal wages and made clear the arrangement was temporary. Sarah accepted without negotiation. She examined the pile of mending and alterations with practiced eyes. Her finishing school education had included domestic skills alongside literature and mathematics. These repairs would be simple work. Within hours, her neat stitches and precise measurements impressed even Patterson. She completed a week's worth of backlogged orders by midday. Word spread quickly through the small town about the quality of her craftsmanship. Caleb arrived at the store during lunch, ostensibly to purchase supplies. He watched Sarah work with quiet admiration. Her concentration reminded him of his law school days, hunched over legal texts with the same focused intensity. That evening, he shared his story over coffee at the boarding house. His family had owned a small farm outside Philadelphia. Corrupt county officials had seized their land through fraudulent tax assessments. His father died fighting the legal battle. His mother and sister succumbed to poverty within 2 years. Sarah listened without judgment. She understood loss and injustice intimately. Her own father had faced mysterious business setbacks in his final months. His death seemed too convenient for certain parties back east. The next morning brought unexpected drama. 2 local farmers, the Martinez brothers, stormed into the general store. Their boundary dispute had escalated to threats of violence. Each claimed ownership of a valuable water source. Patterson suggested they settle matters outside town, away from decent folks. The brothers reached for their weapons, years of resentment boiling over. Sarah stepped forward calmly. She asked to examine their property deeds and survey documents. Both men hesitated, unused to taking direction from someone of her position. Her voice carried quiet authority as she spread the papers across the counter. She traced boundary lines with her finger, explaining territorial water rights with precision that stunned the gathering crowd. The older Martinez brother owned the spring itself. The younger brother held rights to the stream flowing from it. Neither could block the other's access without violating territorial law. She cited specific statutes from memory. The brothers stared in amazement. Their attorney in the county seat had demanded $50 to research the same question. This woman had solved their problem in minutes. Caleb watched from the doorway, his respect deepening. Her legal knowledge surpassed most frontier lawyers. Something in her background remained hidden, something valuable. Mayor Blackwood arrived as the brothers shook hands. His smile faltered when he learned of Sarah's intervention. He had hoped their dispute would force land sales. Resolved neighbors served his interests poorly. Over the following days, more townspeople sought Sarah's advice. She helped settle inheritance questions and contract disputes with remarkable skill. Her reputation for fairness spread beyond Copper Ridge's borders. Widow Hartwell observed these developments with growing unease. The woman was gaining influence too quickly. She voiced concerns about outsiders disrupting established order. Sarah continued her sewing work while building trust carefully. She listened more than she spoke, learning the town's hidden dynamics. Mayor Blackwood controlled the bank, the land office, and most council members. His power seemed absolute. Caleb began visiting the general store daily. Their conversations revealed shared values about justice and education. He confessed his abandoned dream of practicing law. She encouraged him to reconsider, sensing his natural aptitude. One evening, she finally opened her father's leather satchel. Inside lay property deeds, survey maps, and investment certificates. Her hands trembled as she realized the implications. Her father had owned substantial land holdings throughout the territory. His railroad investments included property surrounding Copper Ridge itself. The documents made her one of the wealthiest landowners in Arizona. More disturbing were his final letters. He had discovered irregularities in local land sales. Someone was selling property they did not legally own. His investigation had made him dangerous enemies. Sarah understood now why certain parties had wanted him silenced. His death in that convenient carriage accident seemed far less random. She was the heir to both his fortune and his enemies. The next morning brought troubling news. Mayor Blackwood approached her at the general store with an offer to purchase her father's old papers. He claimed they were worthless, but his eagerness suggested otherwise. She politely declined, claiming sentimental value. His smile grew strained as he increased his offer. When she continued refusing, his friendly mask slipped slightly. That afternoon, Caleb found her reviewing the documents privately. She shared her discoveries carefully, gauging his reaction. His legal training helped him understand the magnitude of the fraud. They were facing systematic corruption reaching the highest levels of local government. Her inheritance put her directly in the path of dangerous people, but it also gave her power to fight back. Sarah made a strategic decision. She would keep her wealth secret while gathering evidence of the mayor's crimes. Her position as a dismissed outsider provided perfect cover for investigation. Caleb pledged his support without hesitation. His family's destruction had taught him the cost of unopposed corruption. Together, they could seek justice for all the victims. The evening air carried desert coolness as they planned their next moves. Sarah's arrival had seemed like an ending. Instead, it marked the beginning of something far more significant. The town council meeting convened on Thursday evening in the church basement. Sarah arrived early, taking a seat in the back row. Her presence drew stares and whispered comments from the assembled residents. Mayor Blackwood called the meeting to order, his voice booming across the cramped space. The agenda included routine business about road repairs and livestock regulations. Nothing that would typically draw large crowds, but tonight felt different. Tension crackled through the room like electricity before a storm. Caleb entered midway through the proceedings, nodding to Sarah before finding his own seat. His support had become more visible over the past weeks, drawing criticism from some quarters. The mayor discussed plans for expanding the town's boundaries. New development opportunities would require additional land purchases. He painted a picture of prosperity and growth that stirred excitement among listeners. Sarah's hands tightened in her lap. The land he described belonged to her according to her father's documents. Blackwood was selling property he had no legal right to touch. When the floor opened for questions, she stood slowly. The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward her. Her heart pounded. But her voice remained steady. She asked about the legal basis for the proposed land sales. Who currently held title to these properties? Had proper surveys been conducted? Were all ownership claims properly documented? Mayor Blackwood's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He assured the gathering that all legal requirements had been met. The town's interests were fully protected. Sarah pressed forward with surgical precision. She cited specific territorial statutes governing land transfers. Her questions revealed gaps in the mayor's explanations that had gone unnoticed by less educated residents. The crowd began murmuring among themselves. Some recognized the validity of her concerns. Others resented being lectured by an outsider, especially one of her background. Widow Hartwell rose to address the room. She questioned whether someone so new to their community should challenge established leadership. Some matters were better left to those with deeper roots. Sarah remained standing, her dignity intact despite the veiled attack. She acknowledged her newcomer status but emphasized that legal truth recognized no social hierarchy. Property rights protected everyone equally. Caleb stood in support, his presence lending weight to her position. His reputation for honesty and fairness carried influence with many residents. His backing suggested her concerns deserved serious consideration. The mayor attempted to regain control by dismissing the questions as unnecessary complications. Progress required trust in elected leadership. Excessive scrutiny would only delay beneficial projects, but damage had been done. Seeds of doubt were planted in minds that had never questioned official authority. Sarah's legal knowledge had exposed weaknesses in what seemed like solid ground. After the meeting, several residents approached her with additional questions. The school teacher wondered about establishing a proper library. The blacksmith asked about expanding his property boundaries. Each conversation reinforced her growing influence, while revealing more about the town's hidden dynamics. People were hungry for guidance they could trust, leadership that respected their intelligence. That night, Sarah and Caleb met privately at the boarding house. She revealed the full extent of her inheritance, spreading the deeds and certificates across her small table. The documents painted a stunning picture. Her father had owned vast tracts surrounding Copper Ridge. His railroad investments included rights-of-way that would determine the town's future development. More shocking were his personal notes detailing suspicious activities, land sales involving property he legally owned, forged documents bearing official seals, a systematic pattern of theft disguised as legitimate business. Caleb studied the evidence with his trained legal eye. The scope of corruption exceeded anything he had imagined. Mayor Blackwood was not just taking advantage of opportunities, he was orchestrating elaborate fraud. The implications terrified both of them. Sarah's father had discovered this same information. His convenient death suddenly appeared far more sinister. She was now walking the same dangerous path, but retreat was impossible. Too many innocent people faced losing their homes and livelihoods. The Martinez brothers' water dispute was just one example of manufactured conflicts designed to force land sales. They developed a careful strategy. Sarah would continue building trust within the community while secretly documenting the mayor's crimes. Her position as an educated outsider made her uniquely qualified for both roles. Caleb would use his legal background to research territorial law and precedent. Together, they could build an unshakable case that would expose the entire conspiracy. The next morning brought unexpected validation. Mrs. Patterson approached Sarah at the general store with a proposal. The town's children needed proper education beyond basic reading and arithmetic. Would she consider teaching them? The offer represented a breakthrough in community acceptance. Parents would not trust their children's education to someone they truly despised. Her patience and dignity were finally bearing fruit. Sarah accepted the teaching opportunity eagerly. Education had always been her passion, and the role would provide perfect cover for her investigation. She could build relationships while gathering information. Within days, her impromptu classroom in the church basement drew children from across the town. Her teaching methods combined rigorous academics with genuine warmth. Students flourished under her guidance. Even Widow Hartwell began softening her opposition. She observed the children's rapid progress with grudging admiration. Whatever her personal reservations, the woman clearly possessed remarkable educational gifts. Mayor Blackwood watched these developments with growing unease. Sarah's influence was expanding faster than he had anticipated. Her questions at the council meeting had started conversations he preferred to avoid. He approached her with a final offer for her father's papers. The price had tripled, revealing his desperation. When she declined again, his mask of civility finally slipped completely. The battle lines were drawn. Sarah possessed the evidence to destroy him, but she remained vulnerable and isolated. The next moves would determine whether justice or corruption would prevail in Copper Ridge. Sarah's makeshift classroom buzzed with activity as children worked through arithmetic problems. Young Tommy Martinez struggled with fractions until she showed him how to divide his father's apple harvest. The concept clicked immediately, bringing a proud smile to his face. Outside, Caleb waited with his horse, ready for their afternoon investigation. They had developed a routine of riding the territory's boundaries, ostensibly for leisure, but actually documenting discrepancies in land records. Their first stop was the old Henderson property. The family had sold their homestead 6 months ago after facing mounting tax debts. According to Sarah's documents, her father had legally purchased this land 2 years prior to their supposed ownership. Caleb examined the survey stakes while Sarah compared them to her maps. The boundaries did not match official records. Someone had deliberately altered property lines to create false ownership claims. They photographed evidence using Caleb's small camera, building a visual record of the fraud. Each discrepancy strengthened their case while revealing the conspiracy's sophisticated nature. At the abandoned Miller farm, they discovered similar irregularities. The family had lost their land in a sheriff's sale, claiming they could not afford the mortgage payments. Sarah's inheritance papers showed her father had paid off their debt months before the foreclosure. The pattern became clear. Families were being systematically cheated out of property they legally owned or had legitimate claims to. The stolen land was then resold to unsuspecting buyers or held for future development. That evening, Sarah graded her students' work while organizing their growing evidence. Her teaching had created unexpected opportunities for gathering information. Parents shared their struggles during school visits, revealing more victims of the land scheme. Mrs. Patterson confided that her husband had paid twice for their store's property, first to the original owner, then again to the bank when their deed was mysteriously challenged. The double payment had nearly bankrupted them. Similar stories emerged from other families. The blacksmith had lost his workshop expansion to a boundary dispute. The doctor had been forced to sell his home after questionable tax assessments. Each case followed the same suspicious pattern. Caleb spent his evenings researching territorial law at the courthouse. His legal training proved invaluable in understanding the complex statutes governing property transfers. He discovered multiple violations in nearly every transaction. The mayor's scheme relied on people's unfamiliarity with legal procedures. Most residents lacked education to challenge official-looking documents. They accepted losses as inevitable rather than fighting back through proper channels. But Sarah's arrival had disrupted this comfortable arrangement. Her legal knowledge and her father's documentation threatened to expose years of systematic theft. Their investigation led them to the railroad survey markers placed throughout the valley. These stakes marked the proposed route for the new rail line promised to bring prosperity to Copper Ridge. Sarah compared the railroad maps to her inheritance documents. The proposed route crossed exclusively through properties her father had owned. Someone was selling railroad rights to land they had already stolen from her family. The scope of the conspiracy expanded beyond simple fraud. This was organized theft on a massive scale, involving railroad companies, local officials, and possibly territorial authorities. That night, Caleb confessed his growing feelings for Sarah over coffee at the boarding house. His attraction had begun with admiration for her courage, but had deepened into genuine love. Her intelligence, dignity, and compassion impressed him daily. Sarah admitted her own conflicted emotions. She had learned to distrust men's motives after years of disappointment. But Caleb's consistent support and respect had slowly worn down her defenses. Their shared mission had created intimacy beyond physical attraction. They trusted each other completely with dangerous secrets. Their partnership felt natural and right despite their different backgrounds. But romance would have to wait. The investigation required their full attention and discretion. Personal relationships could compromise their effectiveness or provide ammunition for their enemies. The next week brought disturbing developments. Several townspeople reported being questioned about their conversations with Sarah. Mayor Blackwood's allies were gathering information about her activities and associations. Widow Hartwell approached Sarah after class with a warning. Powerful people were growing concerned about her influence. Perhaps she should consider returning east before circumstances became unpleasant. The threat was veiled but unmistakable. Sarah's investigation had been noticed by dangerous individuals. Her safety could no longer be guaranteed in Copper Ridge. Instead of retreating, she accelerated her efforts. Time was running short before her enemies took direct action. The evidence needed to be complete and unshakable before she could act. Caleb helped her organize their findings into a comprehensive legal brief. His training in legal writing proved essential for presenting complex evidence clearly. They documented each fraudulent transaction with supporting evidence. Their case now included sworn affidavits from victimized families, photographs of altered survey markers, and copies of conflicting property records. Most damaging were her father's original investment documents proving his legitimate ownership. The brief revealed a criminal enterprise extending far beyond Mayor Blackwood. Railroad executives, county officials, and territorial appointees were all involved in the systematic theft of private property. Armed with irrefutable evidence, Sarah made a fateful decision. She would confront the corruption publicly at the next town council meeting. The risk was enormous, but justice demanded bold action. Caleb pledged his complete support despite the personal danger. His family's destruction had taught him the cost of remaining silent. They would face the consequences together, whatever they might be. As they prepared for the confrontation, both understood their lives would never be the same. Success would bring justice, but also powerful enemies. Failure could mean exile or worse. The stakes could not be higher. The future of Copper Ridge hung in the balance. The church basement overflowed with residents on the night of the emergency town meeting. Word had spread that serious accusations would be presented. Curiosity and tension filled the cramped space like smoke from a poorly ventilated fire. Mayor Blackwood entered with his usual confident stride, but sweat beaded his forehead despite the evening coolness. He had tried to prevent this gathering, claiming it violated proper procedures. The crowd's demands had overruled his objections. Sarah sat in the front row, her leather satchel resting beside her feet. The documents inside represented months of careful investigation and her father's life's work. Tonight, they would finally see daylight. Caleb positioned himself near the door, watching for potential trouble. Several of the mayor's supporters had arrived early, their hostile glances suggesting they might attempt to disrupt the proceedings. The meeting opened with unusual formality. Sarah had requested the presence of the circuit judge, who happened to be visiting the county seat. His attendance lent legal weight to whatever revelations would emerge. When called to speak, Sarah rose with steady composure. She began by thanking the community for welcoming her despite initial reservations. Her students had shown her the town's fundamental goodness and desire for truth. She opened her satchel and withdrew the first document. Her father's original railroad investment certificate, dated 2 years before any local land transactions began. The crowd leaned forward to examine the official seals and signatures. Mayor Blackwood objected immediately. He claimed the documents were irrelevant to current town business. Private investment papers had no bearing on legitimate municipal planning. The circuit judge silenced him with a raised hand. He examined the certificate carefully, confirming its authenticity. The legal implications were clear to anyone with proper training. Sarah continued methodically through her evidence. Property deeds showing her father's ownership of land currently being sold by the mayor's office. Survey maps revealing deliberately altered boundary markers. Mortgage documents proving families had been cheated out of their homes. Each revelation sent shocked murmurs through the assembled crowd. Residents began connecting their personal losses to the larger pattern of fraud. The Martinez brothers exchanged meaningful glances, remembering their mysteriously complex water dispute. Mrs. Patterson gasped when Sarah presented evidence that her husband's double land payment was entirely unnecessary. The original deed had never been legally challenged. The bank's claims were based on forged documents. The most damning evidence came last. Sarah revealed correspondence between Mayor Blackwood and railroad executives discussing the systematic acquisition of her father's properties. The letters detailed plans to eliminate any obstacles to their profitable scheme. One letter referenced her father's growing suspicions about local land transactions. Another discussed the need for permanent solutions to problematic investigations. The implications regarding his convenient death hung heavy in the silent room. Caleb stepped forward to present the legal analysis. His training allowed him to explain complex property law in terms everyone could understand. The fraud violated multiple territorial statutes and federal regulations. The railroad's involvement elevated the crimes beyond local jurisdiction. Federal marshals would need to investigate the conspiracy's full scope. Prison sentences awaited anyone convicted of such systematic theft. Mayor Blackwood rose desperately to defend himself. He claimed the accusations were the bitter fantasies of an outsider seeking attention. Why should the town believe someone who had arrived under suspicious circumstances? His words triggered an unexpected response. Widow Hartwell stood slowly, her black dress rustling in the sudden silence. Her voice carried moral authority that silenced all opposition. She had watched Sarah's character for months. The woman had earned respect through her teaching, her fairness in settling disputes, and her dignity under pressure. Her accusations deserved serious consideration. More supporters joined Hartwell's declaration. Parents praised Sarah's dedication to their children's education. Business owners credited her advice with resolving costly legal problems. Her contributions to the community spoke louder than her origins. The mayor's political allies began distancing themselves as the evidence mounted. Several council members demanded his immediate resignation. The bank president announced a full audit of all recent land transactions. Sarah presented her final bombshell. As her father's heir, she legally owned most of the land the mayor had been selling illegally. Every fraudulent transaction would be reversed. Every stolen property would be returned to its rightful owners. The crowd erupted in celebration as families realized their losses could be recovered. The Martinez brothers embraced, knowing their farm was safe. Mrs. Patterson wept with relief that her husband's sacrifice had not been in vain. Mayor Blackwood made a desperate attempt to leave, but the circuit judge ordered his detention. Federal charges would be filed immediately. His associates in the railroad conspiracy would face similar fates. As the formal proceedings concluded, Caleb approached Sarah with obvious pride. Her courage had exposed a massive criminal enterprise while protecting innocent families. Justice had prevailed through intelligence rather than violence. The crowd surrounded them both, offering thanks and congratulations. The woman they had once rejected had become their savior. Her persistence and dignity had transformed not just individual lives, but the entire community's future. That night, as celebration continued in the streets, Sarah finally allowed herself to mourn her father properly. His death had been avenged through legal means he would have approved. His legacy lived on in the justice she had secured. The railroad conspiracy's exposure would ripple through territorial politics for years. But in Copper Ridge, a new era of honest leadership and inclusive community had begun. Sarah's transformation from rejected bride to respected leader was complete. Her true worth had been recognized at last. Spring sunshine filtered through the windows of Copper Ridge's new schoolhouse as Sarah reviewed lesson plans for the upcoming week. 6 months had passed since the corruption trials concluded, transforming both the town and her place within it. The federal investigation had swept through the territory like a cleansing fire. Mayor Blackwood received 10 years in federal prison for fraud and conspiracy. 3 railroad executives faced similar sentences. County officials who participated in the land scheme lost their positions and faced criminal charges. Sarah's decision to remain in Copper Ridge had surprised many, including herself. The inheritance from her father made her wealthy enough to live anywhere. But this small town had become home in ways she never expected. The new schoolhouse stood as testament to her commitment to the community. Built with funds from her father's estate, it featured proper desks, a lending library, and scientific equipment for advanced students. Children from across the valley attended classes that rivaled Eastern academies. Mrs. Patterson entered the classroom carrying fresh flowers for the windowsills. Her husband's store now thrived after recovering his stolen property. The double land payment had been refunded with interest, restoring their financial stability. The transformation extended beyond individual families. Property owners who had lost land to fraudulent schemes regained their holdings. The Martinez brothers expanded their farm using water rights that were never truly in dispute. The blacksmith built his workshop expansion without fear of manufactured boundary conflicts. Widow Hartwell had become Sarah's closest friend and strongest advocate. Her initial hostility had transformed into fierce loyalty after witnessing Sarah's character under pressure. She now served as the school's volunteer administrator. The afternoon brought wedding preparations as the entire town buzzed with excitement. Sarah and Caleb's ceremony would take place in the church with the whole community in attendance. Their love story had captured hearts throughout the valley. Caleb had resumed his legal career, establishing Copper Ridge's first law office. His practice focused on protecting property rights and ensuring fair treatment for all residents. Former victims of corruption sought his expertise in recovering their losses. Their partnership had evolved naturally from shared mission to deep affection. Caleb's respect for her intelligence and independence formed the foundation of their relationship. Sarah admired his commitment to justice and his gentle strength. The wedding dress hung carefully in Sarah's boarding house room, a creation of ivory silk and delicate lace. Widow Hartwell had insisted on commissioning the finest seamstress in the territorial capital. No detail was too small for their beloved teacher's special day. As evening approached, neighbors gathered to decorate the church with wildflowers and ribbon. The same building where Sarah had once faced hostile questioning now prepared to celebrate her union with the man who had defended her. Tommy Martinez, now excelling in advanced mathematics, carried flowers for the altar arrangements. His parents had insisted their family contribute to the celebration. Sarah's teaching had opened educational opportunities they never imagined possible for their children. The circuit judge returned to perform the ceremony, completing the transformation that began with legal accusations. His presence symbolized how justice and love had triumphed over corruption and prejudice. Caleb spent his final bachelor evening reviewing property deeds with grateful families. The Henderson farm had been restored to the original owner's children. The Miller property would become a community gathering space funded by recovered assets from the criminal conspiracy. Wedding morning dawned clear and bright across the Arizona landscape. Sarah woke with peaceful anticipation, rather than nervous fear. Her journey from rejection to acceptance had taught her to trust in unexpected possibilities. Widow Hartwell arrived early to help with final preparations. She had become the mother figure Sarah had lost years ago, offering wisdom and unconditional support through every challenge. The church filled rapidly as residents arrived in their finest clothing. Children she had taught sat with parents whose legal problems she had solved. The entire community had gathered to witness this celebration of love conquering adversity. Caleb waited at the altar in his best suit, his face glowing with happiness. The boy who had lost his family to corruption had found new purpose in protecting others. The woman who had saved their town had saved his heart as well. Sarah walked down the aisle with quiet dignity, her head held high as always. The same people who had once demanded her departure now stood in respectful admiration. Her character had transformed their understanding of true worth. The ceremony proceeded with simple elegance befitting their practical natures. Their vows emphasized partnership in both love and service to their community. They pledged to continue fighting for justice while building a family together. The celebration continued long into the evening, with music, dancing, and shared stories. Children performed songs they had learned in Sarah's classroom. Adults toasted the couple who had brought positive change to their lives. As the festivities wound down, Sarah and Caleb stood together, watching their friends and neighbors enjoy the fellowship. The woman who had arrived as an unwanted stranger had become the heart of their community. The schoolhouse would expand next year to accommodate growing enrollment. Students were achieving academic levels that opened doors to territorial colleges and professional careers. Education had become Copper Ridge's greatest source of pride. Their love story would be retold for generations as proof that character mattered more than appearance, that dignity could overcome prejudice, and that justice eventually prevailed over corruption. Sarah Montgomery Thornfield had found her place at last, not through compromise or submission, but by remaining true to her principles until others recognized her worth.